Hi everyone, welcome to my sewing studio. It is January, there is still some snow out there on the ground, and I have finished my first make of the new year, which is the Nova coat. I absolutely love this coat. And if you've always wanted to make a coat, this is a great first pattern to start with. So I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on sewing this coat, as well as a tutorial on how to insert the lining. But first, let me introduce myself. I am Lisa, the owner and designer behind Pink Hollybush Patterns, a line of sewing patterns for children, most of which are designed for knits and most of which include an option for smocking. But I am also an avid sewist. I sew for myself and my two adult daughters. So here on my channel, we talk all things sewing and smocking. And today we are going to be talking about the Nova coat. I have been doing a video series on sewing cozy, and this coat is certainly a cozy. So I will put a link to that whole series if you are interested in it. It is about sewing cozy garments for yourself. Okay, first up, this is the Nova coat from Papercut Patterns. It was originally released as the Sapporo coat. From what I can tell from reading reviews and looking around online, it seems that there was a little bit of a problem with how the lining worked when the pattern was originally released. So they corrected that, I believe, and re-released it as the Nova coat. If I am wrong about that, I do apologize. That is just basically what I could glean from looking around. Now, in reading the reviews, it seems that people are still struggling a little bit with how to insert that lining, especially at the bottom front corners, making that clean. And so that is why I've done a tutorial for you at the end. And I used a little bit different method than what is included in the pattern instructions. And so stick around at the end. I will show you how I did that, why I made the changes I did. Now, for some people, they've had a little bit of trouble trying to see how the pieces go together. It is a little bit different. Maybe you can see here, but the way the coat works is there's a top and a bottom front piece that's joined here, and that's how you form those pockets. And then on the back of the coat, turn Betty around so you can see her, there's a center piece and then two side pieces, okay? For here and there, and then your sleeves get attached. So if that seems a little confusing, there is a blog post on the Papercut website. I will link it below so you can go look at that. But the blog post is actually done with photographs, and so you can really easily see how the pieces are going together in the blog post versus the pattern instructions, which are just sketches. So I think that will help, and that is one of the tips. Make sure and go look at the blog post to just see how those pieces go together. Okay, let's talk about fabric choice for this coat. The other reason this is a great first coat is there's such a wide range of fabrics that you can use for it. So I used a wool coating that I got from Fabric Mart in Pennsylvania. I will put a link to that below as well, and a silk lining, which I also purchased there. But the coat that is pictured on the pattern cover is made from a linen. You can use really kind of any woven fabric that has some body to it. So a corduroy or a twill, you can just, no matter what your weather is, there's a fabric that's going to be appropriate to make this coat from. Now, depending on what fabric you do use, as you can see, I used wool. When you go to lay it out, make sure you use a nap layout. and double check, because your pattern pieces are a little not typical looking, make sure that when you lay them out, that the top's at the top and the bottom's at the bottom, and you are sticking with that nap layout. It can be easy to kind of, on these bottom pieces especially, not realize what is the top of the bottom and to goof up the layout. And yet, because, you know, right here on the front, where you're attaching the top piece to the bottom piece, if you have mixed that up and not used a nap layout, you might really see a difference in coloration. So make sure that you are consistent with that. Another thing to note when you're picking out your fabric is, I mentioned this is an oversized fit, and it is. You know, there's quite a bit of bulk here, and I think I'll pop the picture again of me wearing it, and you can see that. So if that's something that bothers you, picking a fabric that has a little bit more drape to it, not as firm a wool coating as this is a thick, warm wool coating that I picked. You know, something that is maybe a wool polyester blend, or that has like a boucle or a boiled wool that maybe isn't as firm and has a little bit more drape, is going to help you with that. Certainly going with a lighter weight fabric will also help you with that. And that brings us next to sizing. Now, as I mentioned, this is an oversized coat, and if you read the reviews, many people who have made this coat have sized it down. So when I, according to my measurements, I should have made, I fall between a 3 and a 4. So I definitely knew I was going to size down to the 3, but I actually made the 2. And again, if you look at the picture of me with the coat on, I certainly would not have wanted it any bigger in through the top here in the bust. Now I think that especially is the case, again, because I used that thicker fabric. If I was making this with something with more drape or something that was lighter weight, being the 3 might have been just fine. Now, having said all of that, what I do wish I had done was graded out to the 3 in the hips. It's not tight, it's plenty of room there, and when you look at finished garment measurements, you'll certainly can see that. But I think if I had had a little bit more room in the hips, it wouldn't pull apart as much, and I'd have a little bit more coverage, which of course, considering I'm wearing this in a cold climate and I made it out of a heavy wool, I want the coat to stay together and to give me that coverage. So if I had it to do over again, I would still make the 2. I would have graded out to the 3 in with the lower pieces. Okay, at this point, we're going to go over to my cutting table. I'm going to show you how I handled the lining. As I mentioned, people had some trouble with how the lining comes together at this lower corner here and getting it to line up. And so I used a different method and actually turned it through the back, the bottom back of the coat, and was able to just do a pivot at the corners. So let's go there and I will show you how I did that. So before I started sewing any of the pieces of my Nova coat together, I first stay stitched all the raw edges of the top pieces of the coat. So I did this to the center back, the 2 side back pieces, and then the 2 front pieces as well. And I didn't just do the neck edge, but I did down the side pieces, because these pieces, they're all cut with unusual shapes, so it's a bias angle, and that means it can stretch very easily. So I just took a few minutes right in the seam allowance and just did that stitching. Then as I started putting these seams together, I used twill tape. So here you can see, there's my twill tape, and you center the tape right in the middle of the seam. And so I'm stitching it right in place as I sewed this seam. Again, that's just to support it. I did that where I connected the back to the two side backs. You see it on both sides. And then I did it across the shoulders. I will also, when I stitch the facing piece to this neckline, I will do it here as well. Now you notice that I didn't have the twill tape go all the way up to the raw edge. I cut it back a little bit so it's not going to be overlapping in this seam allowance there. So it starts down here a little bit because there's going to be a piece of twill tape here when I do the neckline. So the directions say to trim this seam on the sleeve and then understitch it. And you only have a 1 centimeter seam allowance. And so if you trim this seam allowance before you understitch, there's really just nothing much left to understitch, especially when you're dealing with a thick wool. So what I did was sew the sleeve facing to the sleeve as was instructed. Then I pressed open the seam allowance and I trimmed just this facing seam allowance. So you can see this side is thinner than this one. Now I'm going to go press the seam towards the facing and then understitch it. So that way I've reduced bulk, but I still have something that I can understitch down. Once I've understitched this, if there is any extra that I feel I can trim off, I can go ahead and at that point and do it, and then press the entire facing to the inside like I've done here to get a really nice finished sleeve. Right, so let me show you how I'm handling the lining. I'm going to do this a little bit differently because in the reviews a lot of people had trouble with how the lining attached at the front bottom corner of the coat. And so I'm going to use the method that, I'm going to adapt the method that was in the clear coat that I found that worked really well. So I'm going to be turning the lining through the bottom of the coat rather than the side, as is in the directions. So the first thing I did is when I was sewing the lining, I sewed the side seams completely and didn't leave that opening that the instructions tells you to. Then at the bottom of the lining, I've pressed up the seam allowance. On the coat, I've done just a simple catch stitch here. So I've caught the facing that you pressed up to the coat. And I'm just showing you that because I didn't feel that was very clear in the directions, or it was really shown well in the sew along either. So I just did a quick catch stitch. The directions tell you to slip stitch it, but basically what you're doing is just tacking that facing in place so it doesn't drop it down at all when you're wearing the coat. Now over here at the bottom right, or bottom corner here, what I did, I'll show you first, was I went ahead and sewed, this is the miter where you're sewing the side to the bottom, and that is not shown in this sew along, so I want to just show you. It is in the directions, in the written directions, but you're going to sew this corner together. I then went and gave it a good press, and I actually turned it right side out and pressed this whole thing, so I got a nice press now. Then I'm going to turn it back this way because we have to sew our lining to it. All right. So I have one side done for you, and then I'll show you the other. This is the little fold on the side that's in the lining. And I've pinned the lining coming down the side. I've got that corner right into the corner of the side of the coat, and then going all the way over to this the seam between the front of the coat and the back of the coat. And I'll pin this on this side so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm going to unfold that seam allowance, and I'm going to get it right in there. And I'm lining up the seam of this corner, you can see that, with the pressed up seam allowance. Okay. There's my side. I've already matched my seam of the lining to the seam of the coat. Now we're just going to put a couple pins here. Get this on, make sure I don't have a tack there. And then I'm going to go to my sewing machine, and I'm going to start, I'll go another inch or so here into the back of the coat. But basically what I'm going to do now is start here at the bottom back, go across to this corner. Oh, let's get that. So again, so we're not right in there. Okay, I got it. Okay, there you can see it. So that's the little fold that the instructions have you do. So I'm going to start here on the bottom of the coat. I'm going to come over to here, pivot right at this corner, go up around, down, pivot at the other corner, and then come over to the side seam at the bottom, so that I'm leaving the center back of the coat open for the turning. So let me just show you this corner from the right side so you can see how it worked out. This is coming down the side of the coat. There's that little tuck. I pivoted right there at the corner, and then this goes to the back of the coat. Okay, so you can see it opens there and catches it. And then if I shave from the right side, turn this all out. Okay, there's the tuck for ease, and you see I have a nice finish. I have to go press all this up, but you see it's not going to come down and show at all, and it's got some ease in there. So let me show you how you're now going to do the sleeves. So this is the top of the coat. This is the bottom of the coat. This is the front coming down one of the side seams. Okay, so the coat's on this side, the lining's on this side, and the front seam is right here coming down. So I'm going to take this sleeve and this lining, and I've slipped the lining right over the top, and I've pinned it to the facing. So I'm not pinning it through to the sleeve, just pinning it to the facing, right sides together, and I've matched up the seams at the bottom. And now I'm going to go and sew this. It's going to be a little tricky just because of the bulk of everything, but I'm going to sew that at my machine. So let me show you one more time. We'll flip it over. Okay, here's my other one. Okay, so this is the other front side, top of the coat, bottom of the coat. Lining goes out here. To reach in, find my other sleeve. Okay, there's the sleeve. Get it over here where I'm in the camera. Okay, so there's my seam down the front. Here's the sleeve, top of the sleeve, bottom of the sleeve. Here's the lining, right? Bottom of the lining. Just slip the lining over that sleeve, right like that, and we're going to match up our seam allowances and pin this together, and then I will go and sew this at the machine around here as well, and that will almost be time to turn out the coat. Okay, and now it is time for the magic. So here's the bottom of my coat. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna put my hand on up in there and just start turning this out. Clip the bottom. Okay. And there's the coat. Of course, we've got to get my sleeves. This is the part that's all right. You just pull that sleeve. There's my facing. There's the sleeve. Thread. Always thread. More thread. And there is my other sleeve, and there is my coat with the lining all nicely attached. Put my hand in there and put the sleeve pocket down. And I'm going to go give her a good press, and then the only thing left to do is I'm going to hand stitch the lining to the coat, and this will be done. And I hope that you give sewing the Nova coat a try. Happy sewing.